Here's a photo of Pastor Terry Jones sitting in the Dearborn lockup last week after refusing to post a $1 peace bond. The pastor says this is proof of his persecution. First we wondered who took that picture. We thought it might have been a guard, but apparently Reverend Wayne Sapp took that photo, right?
That's my work.
Well, you know, that's one question that a lot of people want to know. You came to Let It Rip last week and tonight dressed in coats and ties, but you went to court dressed in a bicycle outfit, a leather coat and jeans. Why?
Motorcycle outfit, not a bicycle outfit.
You're not.
Close enough. Motorcycle.
I haven't rode a bicycle since I was like 14.
A motorcycle outfit, the leather jacket. Why the difference?
That was actually also the police's fault. What happened? They picked us up from the airport. They rushed us into court. We had no time to change. So, of course, we came in our Harley-Davidson uniform. And then after we had already been there one time, we thought, well, we can't change to a suit and tie. We will just stay with that particular look.
Okay, well, we thank Chief Haddad, by the way, for filling us in on the law. But we also want to understand the legal ramifications. So we have Charlie Langton back with us right now. First of all, this legal drama. Is it constitutional? What about this law? What's the history?
Well, the history of this law goes back to about 1864, if I remember correctly. When Abraham Lincoln was president, the state had only been a state of Michigan for a couple of years, and this law came on the books. This law really is a law to protect people that fight each other. It's the old personal protection order, which we don't have now. I tried to find some cases that interpreted this law, and I found a few. I found one from 1874. I found another one from 1889. And I did find one that's from 1999. Not too old, but there are people fighting. What I don't like about it, and I applaud Dearborn for having these no permit zones. That's okay. And the fact that they allow everybody to speak. The problem here is that Reverend Jones was made to go to court because of his speech, but he had to go through a jury trial. That's not right. This law is constitutional. It is constitutional, but it was applied to this situation improperly.
Well, wait a minute. Constitution according to the Michigan Supreme Court, but the law has not been challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well,
that's a big difference.
No, I'm not saying that the law is constitutional, but you don't bring... Huel, if I threaten you, you could theoretically bring this law against me. Because why? Because I actually threatened you. As far as I know, when I was at that trial, Reverend Jones did not threaten anybody. There was a police officer that testified that there were 40 emails that people were going to threaten him. I think the prosecutor should have gone after those 40 people. But there was no testimony in court that Reverend Jones was going to go after, threaten everybody. I found a case, again from 1880-something, that said two neighbors were fighting over a cow. A cow! And the Kim Worthy person... brought a
the old
complaint.
Prosecutor, yes.
The old prosecutor brought a complaint because of the threatening of a cow. In that case, the statute applies. But Reverend Jones, he didn't threaten a cow. He didn't threaten a Koran. He didn't threaten the mosque. He didn't threaten the mayor. He didn't threaten anybody. He wants to talk. Therefore, I say the law is constitutional, but it doesn't apply in this case.
But of course, the concern was violence. Now, both of you know that what you did in Florida in March indirectly, at the very least, led to the deaths of 9 to 12 innocent people in Afghanistan. They heard about you burning the Quran, and they attacked innocent Westerners who happened to be working in Afghanistan. Now, many people always ask this question. Do you feel you have blood on your hands for what happened?
No. Absolutely not, no.
Why not?
Well, we believe we can't be held responsible for what other people do. In fact, I think it's a great injustice for us to even mention that, because basically what we are now saying, we are saying to those radicals over there, we are saying actually, well, what you all did was wrong, but you were provoked. We think what we should do instead of that, we need to call those people and those countries to accountability for what they have done. Our goal is to try to get the UN to force these countries to adapt freedom of speech, freedom of religion, to adapt human rights and civil rights. Countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, even Saudi Arabia, they do not have these rights.
But that is
that's actually the problem, so that Christians in those countries can live in freedom without having fear of being killed.
I understand, but you also know that the State Department the Defense Secretary, has also called you, warning you that your actions here in the USA might possibly endanger U.S. troops overseas.
Yeah, it was definitely a consideration. As you have to remember, we didn't just burn the Quran. We had an actual trial. It was a very sober event. We even released people from the courtroom, Muslims who were there, if they would feel offended. It was actually a very sober thing, and it was done. As a result of the guilty verdict.
But it was.
And also, what you have to remember is there was the possibility, but the radical element of Islam, they work by fear and intimidation. So there was the possibility they would do absolutely nothing, and there was a possibility that something could happen, because they do work with that element of fear and intimidation, and we can only so long give into it. I mean, look what we have done even in this city. We have canceled free speech. We have stopped things because we were afraid of what other people were going to do. They said themselves there was a group of radicals or young people between the age of 19 and 30. You know, we let these radicals, we let them actually control our freedom of speech and control our lives.
And yet you will be able to speak tomorrow.
Well, radical, I have to comment because this is an absurdity. I don't know under what court law or any law or precedent of law in which they put the Quran on trial. Now, there's an absurdity. I mean, we're accused of having Sharia law in Dearborn, which doesn't exist. I've been here my whole life. I lived among Muslims for 80, well, not, they've been here 80 years, I've been here less. But, you know, I've gone. And they are people who are just like everybody else. They're as American as anyone else. And as each successive generation, they become so much that you can't even see the difference between them and anyone else in our community, but because they become Americanized. But the key here is, I mean, he's saying he put them on trial. Under what law? I mean, I'd like to know. I mean, we know there's no Sharia law, but what law allows him to put a religious document or precedent on trial? What's the authority? And if he's going to say Christian law, then that's equal to Sharia law. It's a law that shouldn't be applied civilly, and I just say there's no basis for that.
But Mayor, you don't jail him for that.
No, we don't. We didn't. We didn't jail him for that.
I don't know what law he's got. I think it's silly.
Yeah.
Whatever law, there's no. You're right. There's no law.
Right.
It's with the Quran on trial.
Right.
That's kind of silly. But that's his belief,
right,
and he's got a right to believe it.
Right.
Whatever. But you don't put him in jail for it.
We didn't put him in jail. The city of Dearborn didn't put him in jail. No, that's an important precedent, because you asked about the Supreme, or whether the federal courts had looked at that ordinance. They didn't look at that, perhaps, but they looked at ours. The Dearborn events ordinance has been looked at by federal courts on 2 occasions, and it is found to be constitutional.
For violating the ordinance.
Right, okay, but that's what I'm saying.
The ordinance didn't come up with the trial.
The city didn't bring him on trial at all. That was not a function that we had any part in.
Wayne County prosecutor.
Right, and
Do you
we're not.
disagree
That's
with the Wayne
independent.
County prosecutor? Did the Wayne County prosecutor overstep her bounds?
I'm not going to comment on that, because she's an independent body of law, and she has to do what she represents the county, and she represents the entire county. And she believed, or she and her staff believed, that there was a threat and that they needed to do something. And I'm not going to take away from that. But the point is, the city of Dearborn, we have our events ordinance. Our events ordinance has been carefully constructed, and it's been upheld in the federal courts. So again, I'm saying we have to distinguish this, because what's happening is people are kind of confusing the 2 issues. What was the role of the city of Dearborn and what was not the role of the city of Dearborn in this? And that's an important distinction.
There's also something else going on right now. You have no flock. Your church is virtually non-existent. And there's some people who are saying that you're simply doing this to make money, that you're now preaching out against radical Islam, against homosexuality. We understand you don't like homosexuals either, and against President Barack Obama, as just a way for you to make money. I mean, who's paying for your flights here? Who's paying for your hotel? Who's paying for the rental car that you shot a hole in last week? How are you making your money?
Well, I can tell you what we're doing definitely out of conviction. We are convinced of the message. We are convinced that America needs to hear this radical element of Islam, of Sharia, of jihad. We believe that it's time for Americans to stand up. What we are actually doing, we are doing very much out of conviction.
Are you making money from this?
No. We're not selling tickets.
Say no, you're not.
I didn't want
he said no, he didn't.
Think about this.
I didn't want to do all the talking.
Think about this for a second.
It's a tie.
Everything we've done out in the open. Every event we've ever been a part of has been out in the open. There's been no ticket sales. You to have us here on the network, we sign a waiver. We're not getting any money.
Oh, no, you're not getting money from us. But by the same token, you
But
do
we
have
thank
a
you for your online
website.
contribution.
You do have a website in which you're asking for contributions. And are you getting those contributions from around the country?
Every nonprofit organization has a online contribution. Go to any. You have a church you go to?
Yes.
Does your church take online contributions?
No, because
You don't.
they're not set up that way, right?
But they take contributions.
Because they deal with just their parishioners who show up. It's a
But they
local-based
take
church.
contributions.
But you know, there's
Oh, we make
but if you now have a church with only 2 members, one might ask if you are truly a nonprofit group. If it's just the 2 of you, I would wonder if maybe the IRS might want to investigate what's going on with your church.
They're welcome to come look at our books.
Bottom line. Charlie, how do you see it?
Oh, well, I see it. I don't know if the IRS, they scare me. But, well, here's the deal. I think the issue is, can he speak? And can he speak in Dearborn? Can he speak in front of a mosque? Can he speak in front of the city hall? I actually think it's because obviously this is creating a lot of confusion in the city. There's no doubt about it that had you spoken if you were to speak last week, a lot of people would have showed up. I don't know how many people are going to show up tomorrow. Bottom line is, I do think the law allows you to speak. I think that had you gone over the line, had you yourself caused a problem, I think you could have been arrested. I do not like the fact that there was almost this preemptive challenge here. This prior restraint as the law and I think that violates the Constitution. And I know that you've hired an attorney now from here, Richard Thompson,
former Oakland County prosecutor, your attorney,
who will challenge what happened last week. And I tell you, I will be very anxious to see how the appellate courts review this. But what's interesting though is that despite the message here, it does seem to me that Pastor Jones has now become the poster child of free speech, and I think that's kind of ironic.
But I also think that the prosecutor has accomplished her mission too. She has diffused a volatile situation that might have happened last week to a situation we have today where the pastor and his assistant will be allowed to speak, but nobody may be there to listen.
I think one thing
What time
exposed.
is that one?
I think one thing is exposed is it shows, just as it's been said, there are many restrictions on free speech throughout the country. This just happens to be one place that it's being
All right,
done.
much more ahead. Thank you. The pastor's protest isn't the only story, of course, making headlines right now. There's also the royal wedding. Prince William and Kate Middleton tying the knot. Some people can't wait to see it. Women primarily. Others couldn't care less. Charlie Langton takes Let It Rip on the road when we come back.